Hey, good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Francesco Abbruzzino live news and talk show. I'm Frankie, your host. This is a worldwide transmission put out through the TVSN network, a minor threat production. The show runs from 3 to 5, 24/7 on the reruns. If you go to my website, which is on the tagline just below me, the FrancescoAbbruzzinoShow.com. Normally we do have a call-in. I don't know if I'm going to open the lines today. I have a lot of news out there. The call-in number is 941-584-4874 if I do open it up. Like I said, a lot of things. I had to take yesterday off because, like I said on my Facebook posting, my job that actually pays me something to survive and to eat and maintain a lifestyle called for me yesterday, so I had to do a bit more yesterday. Was not able to put out the show, but we are back on. Sorry, someone just put some text on to me. But we're back on the air, and we are live, and we are in full swing. This is a one-man, truly one-man operation. I do all the technical aspects. I do all the researching and all the hosting on the show. Unedited, unscripted, and as I said, live. So we're going to go ahead and run with it. The goal, the objective of the show is just to get information out to you that you don't see through major media so that you're more informed. Some of the information, some of the stories I share on here, I may or may not believe in, but I think it's good to look at every aspect of it so that we're making the informed decisions throughout life. Hence the tag educate, inspire, and change. So it's hopefully educating you on some new stuff out there, inspiring you to get out there and change, to go out there and make change locally within your local government, state, county, federal government, or within your own lives. So let's go ahead with this inspirational video on this little kid. I'm sure you'll find it truly inspirational as I did.
Can you stand up on one leg, Nikolai?
Oops, bumped your head. Hop,
Can you hop, hop?
Hop, hop.
Nikolai.
Hop for your foot. Slow it out.
What do you think you're going to do today?
Play. Eat for chocolate. I touched it, Mom.
How old are you now?
8.
You see that type of inspiration in every, in a lot of different people out there. I was out surfing, when was it? I think it was yesterday, and I was just up there at my car drying off, and I looked over to my side, and I saw an individual who was carrying a longboard down to the beach, and he was a paraplegic. He had just the one leg, I think, at his knee, and he was going out there surfing. I've never seen him down there before, but it's great to see that. It's inspirational to see that these individuals just didn't give up because of their handicap, that they're out there and they're continuing the good fight. That's always inspirational in my mind. Now we're going to go into some stuff. First thing on the cover is this Northport situation. If you watch my show, I've talked a lot about the local police. They're about 20 minutes south of me, and a lot of people consider them a little bit of our city. It's called Northport. They had an issue with a couple of cops that were at a party. One was on duty, one was off duty. The one that was off duty called the on-duty officer and said, hey, come on over, let's hang out at this party. He went over there, and we don't have all the information out, but this one victim is alleging that she was sexually abused by this lady and the gentleman. The lady says she doesn't remember anything. The gentleman officer committed suicide and shot himself when they were coming over to arrest him. Now we just found out that 3 more officers have been put on paid leave, and they're involved in the same incident. We'll listen to that story, and it's just a continuing saga over there. My concern here is just how much protection they get. As you may or may not know, I run the local media, which I talk about on here a lot with Venice, the Venice Scoop, Northport Scoop, Inglewood Scoop, Taking a Bite Out of Crime, all those good Facebook pages, which have a following of about 35,000 people and a reach of about 140,000 a week. So it gets out there, it gets a lot of attention. A lot of times I'll have the local law enforcement, they'll send me stuff and say, hey, we're looking for this person. Or they're always putting out stories to the media saying, hey, this guy was arrested, and immediately their face is plastered everywhere. Somebody may make an allegation, boom, their face is plastered there. But these officers don't get the same, for some reason they're treated differently. They're treated with golden kid gloves. They keep quoting some statute, which I've yet seen, but why are they treated this way? Why is there a statute that says that they get treated any better than the normal individuals that are out there? I've seen over and over time. We had an individual detective with my local Venice PD got busted for him speeding. I think it was a DUI speeding. They wouldn't put his name out, wouldn't put his mugshot up, anything. Now, if that was a normal individual, that would have been spread all over the news. I can guarantee you, if I get busted doing something illegal, drinking, DUI, whatever it is, you will see my name everywhere, especially because of how well known I am in this area, but it will be everywhere. Why am I treated differently than the officers? And that's the simple question. And this is what continues to lead towards what I've been hounding about discipline within the ranks, which leads a lot of these officers to believe they can go out and do stuff because they're above the law. Not all of them, 99% of them are good professional citizens out there working the job, doing what is called of them. The 1%, though, they're out there abusing the power that's been granted to them. So let's take a quick look at this news article for anybody that's been following this story with me. Hopefully I can expand it. Yeah, I can.
Are we still on for tomorrow?
Oh, great. We get the lovely commercial that she always... Oh, look at that.
Come back tomorrow.
Now that's a first. They won't let you silence the. They got the volume button there, but they won't let you silence it.
Can't wait till tomorrow.
So, CSX. Okay, here we go.
Our top story, the Northport Police Department is investigating 3 of its own. ABC7 has learned 3 police officers are on administrative leave pending the outcome of an internal affairs investigation. ABC7's Max Winitz is live in the studio with more on this tonight. Max.
Haley, good evening. The Northport Police Department really isn't saying much tonight about why 3 officers are on paid leave. There is some speculation, however, that this could be something stemming from that infamous party where a woman claims to have been sexually assaulted by the now deceased Officer Ricky Urbina and Officer Melanie Turner. Our coverage partners at the Northport Sun were able to obtain these letters sent from Chief Kevin Vespia to the 3 officers, alerting them to surrender their badges, firearms, and cars because the department would be placing them on paid administrative leave. One of the letters is dated March 31st, the other 2, April 10th. No other major Further details are provided in those letters. When the Northport Sun contacted Vespia, all he would say is, quote, "We want to provide as much information as we can because our city believes in transparency, but we are also obligated to follow the law. That law governs the receipt and processing of complaints against law enforcement personnel." Today, we contacted Assistant Chief Anthony Sirianni, and he, too, would not elaborate on this situation. So in total, there are now 4 officers on leave from the Northport Police Department. That fourth, Melanie Turner, who has been charged with principal to sexual battery and false imprisonment from that alleged incident at that birthday party last month. There were also many other law enforcement officers at that party, but again, at this time, it remains unclear if the 3 new officers are on leave because of something that happened at that party. I'll keep you up to date.
And like Max said in that show, it's unclear if it's something that happened at that party or if it's some new revelation, something else that's occurred. But what's going on down there in Northport? How do you have a total of 4 officers on paid leave? We don't know what's going on because they won't communicate it to the media. Because they're shielding these officers from any publicity, any media, from getting out there and throwing their name and their situation all over the place, like they would any other common person out there, any other citizen. So again, special treatment. You have to worry about the special treatment, the lack of discipline there, and what this captain or chief is doing down there to have so many people in hot water. Who's he hiring? What's going wrong there? Where's the breakdown? Wish we could delve into that, but we can't because he's being quiet and doesn't want to share any information. And another thing, this is great for bloggers such as myself. The court declared that, yes, bloggers are considered media. This was a court case that this Christopher Cummins was bringing out due to defamation. He brought it against a local blogger, and the court came out and said, sorry, because you didn't follow the processes. We're not going to hold, you can't come after this guy for blogging it or publicizing it. The appeals court came in, state appeals court, and said it's just not just rejected Cummins' anti-blog claim more thoroughly, but also highlighted the importance of blogs to the media landscape, which is always good. It gives more credibility to the bloggers out there like myself. I can tell you that I probably get a lot more attention than a lot of the papers and a lot of the news stations, and people consider me probably more media than them. That's the state of affairs right now. Now, granted, they'll go out and get the stories, but a lot of times they'll come to my local blog page and look for material to get the stories. I can tell you that, and I've said this before, all the local papers, their editors, their writers, the local reporters for the news stations, they all follow my page. So make out of it what you will. Okay, next we're moving over to this one. This was interesting, and it's about 86 million full-time private sector employees, sector workers, sustain the benefit takers, they're calling that people with some type of government subsidy, and they're saying there's 148 million of them. So 86 million basically are supporting 148 million. According to the Census Bureau, and a number of American citizens, especially those entrusted with public office, should know it is 86,429. That's the number of Americans who in 2012 got up every morning and went to work in the private sector and did it week after week in, week out, every day, excluding Saturday and Sunday, or possibly on Saturday and Sunday. In 2012, according to the Census Bureau, approximately 103 trillion people million people worked full-time year-round in the United States. A full-time worker is someone that has 35 hours a week or more and 50 or more weeks during the year. But basically what this whole article went on to just say is how much the government is getting into everybody's lives and starting to control a lot of different aspects of it, so that how you got to think of it long term. How's this going to be when we let's just take an example. let's say that the dollar is no longer the reserve currency out there. The world's pulling away from it, which China, Russia, a lot of countries are, and a lot of people want to because they feel like it's a form of control that the United States has, and it's what keeps us on top of everybody. So they pull away from it. Well, if that happens, we can no longer just print money in the Federal Reserve, which is not a government entity. I just want to throw that out there. You can no longer print the money there. We're going to have to go out and actually pay our bills. To pay our bills, we're going to have to tighten our belts. Austerity. It won't be unlike what's happening in Italy, Greece, Venezuela, all over. Now listen to these numbers, and these are things that would get cut because you got to cut somewhere, right? Census Bureau, approximately 82 million people lived in households where one or more people are on Medicaid. 49 million lived in households where someone got food stamps. 23 million lived in households where one or more got WIC. 20 million lived in households where one or more got SSL. That's Social Security for someone that's injured and can't work. 13 million lived in public or government subsidized housing. So these are all people that are reliant upon the government. The other good thing about this is for the Democrats, the liberals, they're going to go along with any government or form of government that's going to be more inclined to hand out more entitlements. I push this over and over, stating that we're an entitlement society. We're a lot more now. We're just looking for handouts, and even more so since Obama's come on board. It's a state of affairs, a sad state of affairs. And my real concern is what's going to happen when we can no longer just print that money and we have to tighten that belt. Then we're really going to see some major issues out there. So state of affairs there. This next one was interesting. I just saw this before coming on, and it's about General Mills. And it's a new approach they're using to try and bar people from suing them. And it goes as far as to saying if you like our fan page, you can't sue us. Let me see. I do have an article. It's on here. It's on Yahoo, which takes a second to pull up. So let me go to a split screen. Yahoo. Here we go. And basically what they're saying is they claim that everyone who has received anything from it that can be deemed as a benefit, even agreeing to like it.
A different Minnesota company is stirring up some conversation over what liking something on Facebook means. New York Times reporting this today. General Mills has added some new language to its website, and it says customers give up their right to sue them if they like General Mills or any of their products on Facebook. They also give up that right, according to the company, when they download digital coupons or enter any online sweepstakes. Instead, the company is saying that customers will only be able to negotiate or go through arbitration if there's a problem or a dispute. New York Times says this makes General Mills the first major food company to have this sort of policy. Certainly don't know if that policy will hold up when a customer challenges it in court, but...
So it's interesting to see that companies are moving in that direction. And they basically went out and said they've added language to their website that warns consumers that if they download company coupons, enter a company contest, or interact with the company in any other way, they will only be able to resolve disputes through informal negotiations with the corporation or by binding arbitration. And a lot of people are concerned. You know, will more companies start to go in this direction? How will it hold up in court? Like that individual said, how will it hold up in court if it ever makes it that far? So you got to be careful, and it all goes along with reading a lot of these agreements that they're putting out there. I was watching John McAfee with McAfee Antivirus. He was on Alex Jones' show, and he was talking about this new software he has for the Android phone and soon for the iPhone, where it will go in, look at your different apps that are on there, and then it will tell you if these apps are using your camera, your microphone, if they're taking any of your data, if they're sharing that data, if they're using your camera without you knowing it, all that good stuff. And then if you delve into it, he started looking even further after they created this software. And a lot of these agreements are basically you saying, yeah, we'll do it. And he said the biggest problem is people just click agree without reading it because it's so lengthy and they don't have the time nor are they really interested because they don't believe a company will go and take their data and share it, that a company will snoop on them through their camera. They just can't fathom that, so they go ahead and click agree. But he does have this new software. I'm waiting for it to get on the iPhone so that I can check it out. And that's on General Mills, so it's interesting. I'd like to see where that takes off to. And again, I think I already said this. We're trying to cover stuff you don't see on a lot of major media. You might see it on some local media shows like this individual news show that we just said, or the Northport one, but you're not seeing a major media looking at the show or the surrounding issues with it. Zero Tolerance is the next one. This is a interesting story, and what I did is I put the picture up. Where's it at? Here we go. It's a squirt gun. And you know what? First thing I thought of is there's the squirt gun. It almost looks like a banana. The first thing I thought of is when I graduated. We were during my senior year, 1985. Yeah, I know I'm an old guy. We were all running around with squirt guns at Venice High School, and we were squirting each other. And I remember at one point I was driving my car. It was a rental car. My stepdad rented it for me. It was a convertible. I had like 5 of us in there. And another car pulled up of fellow classmates from the class of 85. So we're out there just squirting each other. And we just got out of school. You know, we weren't drinking. We weren't doing anything. But the cop pulled us over, and I think it was Pete Walker. And back then, cops were pretty cool. They were a lot different than they are now. You know, they were like, pull you over. Hey, guys, stop screwing around. I know who you are. And we were a smaller town probably back then, too. But I'm just thinking, if we were doing that nowadays, I'd be sitting in jail. I might be in trouble, like this one zero tolerance policy causing schools to resemble a prison, which I'm going to cover in a second. Or like this individual that brought this squirt gun in. He's a student in Maine who has been suspended for 10 days after he brought a bright yellow water gun to school, in yet another case of zero tolerance insanity. The unidentified boy was handed the punishment by officials at the Lawston High School after the toy pitcher fell out of his backpack in class that week. They don't say his punishment on here, though. 10 days without school for a teenager, 10 days suspension, because he brought that there. And again, it's not that the school officials knew this wasn't a gun, but it's that whole zero tolerance approach where you just got to say, tough, we know, we see it's not a weapon. We understand that. But with zero tolerance, there is no gray area. It's if you have anything resembling a gun, boom, this is what you get, which is what's going to be covered in this next article. And this is just zero tolerance policy causing schools to resemble prisons. And this is on an individual. His name was Jordan Weiser. He's an 18-year-old student out of Ashtabula County Technical and Career Campus in Jefferson, Ohio. Let me get back to this screen. And on December 12th, he says what he was planning on becoming a police officer. He probably ended that now because he'll be lucky to find work anywhere now that he's got a record. The principal said that he had reason to believe that I had a weapon in my vehicle and he needed to search it. This was back in November 12th of 2013. So then the principal began to make him empty his pockets, and the vice principal grabbed me and patted me down very forcibly. Then they took my car keys. They wanted to take an attorney. He wanted to talk to an attorney or his father. He was told it wasn't an option. The search revealed a ears-offed gun, a stun gun, and a 3-inch folding knife in the pocket of the EMT jacket, which was locked in the trunk of his car. Wise is or was a volunteer firefighter and had the knife in the event he needed to cut his seatbelt to free a victim in a car crash, and it was in his EMT jacket. Wise was arrested and jailed, where he stayed incarcerated for nearly 2 weeks. In a hearing, the judge ordered him to be held on a $500,000 bond. He was then held on a $500,000 bond pending psychological evaluation. He passed the evaluation. Ever since zero tolerance policies have been installed in schools across the country, there is a zero room for understanding. We're seeing that. Common sense, we're seeing that. Or good judgment. The policy precludes any wiggle room based on the circumstances, but instead requires punishing any infraction or rule, such as the squirt gun, the yellow squirt gun. Studies of such draconian policies have come up empty of any evidence that it cuts down on crime. Students have been expelled for possessing nail clippers, cough drops, mouthwash, or even rubber bands. And it just goes on and on and on in the story, just talking about how crazy, how draconian these zero tolerance laws are. Let's see, here, right here it says, would anybody actually mistake that for a real weapon? Over they're talking about the gun on this one. I guess I separated the pages. Here's two statistics, though. They come back on here and say, not statistics, actual things that occurred. This is not the first time squirt guns have been the focus of zero-tolerance crackdowns in schools. A year ago, police in New York State confiscated a man's real firearm and revoked his pistol license after his son threatened to use a water pistol against a bully that was taunting him at school. A month earlier, police rushed a Malden High School in Massachusetts after reports of a gun only to discover a neon-colored water pistol. And yet another incident of a 5-year-old girl was suspended after a 3-hour grilling and described as terroristic threat when she brought a pink bubble gun into school. So, what say you? Zero tolerance. Do the schools need to face reality? Put some common sense into it, and see that a 5-year-old carrying a squirt gun is not going to hurt anybody. I get the whole Sandy Hook type thing. I get that, and I understand the concerns out there. But sometimes I think we have to instill some common sense and out there into the teachers, into the program, and act accordingly. What say you? Next one is on biometric gun control. Actually, it's on biometrics all together. This I was going to do the biometric database, which we'll do after this story, but biometric gun control was a discussion on the Hill today, so let's go to that. And this involves a story that I covered, I think it was last week, in regards to the AG, Attorney General, and Obama wanting to push for gun bracelets or biometrics, which would basically make all other guns without them illegal, and another form of gun control. And it's got a lot of privacy advocates concerned. It's got a lot of Second Amendment advocates concerned. And let's see, let's go ahead and expand this. Looks like we got a 30-second commercial. Basically, though, the GOP fears that the executive order on biometrics, and that's the whole concern, is that he won't use the legislation to get this passed because he knows he can't. So a lot of people fear that he may overstep again and use his executive powers. Here we go.
Top Senate Republican is warning the Obama administration this week not to require biometric technology surrounding the nation's gun sales. Senator John Cornyn, the minority whip, is concerned that recent testimony from U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder is some indication that the Obama administration plans to move soon to require things like fingerprinting and bracelets, which many gun control advocates say are necessary safety steps. Republicans have long been critical of the Obama administration for what they say is an abuse of executive power. Cornyn reiterated those concerns in his letter to Holder this week, both questioning the administration's authority to apply such a change and warning that his constituents simply won't stand for it.
All right, so there you have it, where Republicans are starting to be really concerned. Now, the executive order is one thing, and I get that all the presidents have done that, but what a lot of them are concerned is that Obama has taken it to a new level, pushed an executive order on issues that the previous administrations, Republican and Democrat, would have never even gone near, because to get validity, to get buy-in from the public, it's got to go through the legislative branch. They definitely feel that this is a form of gun control. They definitely feel that he will use his executive powers to pass biometrics or a bracelet with the gun, just like he will with the minimum wage. and it concerns them. And as citizens, it should concern us. I don't know if the first thing I think is, besides with the biometrics, first thing I think is biometrics is going to be a database. Generally, they're going to keep my fingerprints, my facial recognition in a database with everybody else, criminals and everybody, so they always have access to it, which is real concerning about the privacy issue. Do I mind the whole biometric concept with your gun not firing unless it's your fingerprint, or the gun not firing unless you have a bracelet? I don't mind that, but that's me wanting to, my decision. It's not the government coming in and saying we're going to do this biometric database for you guys. And the only reason I would want it is because I have kids and my gun's locked up right now, which makes it hard if anyone breaks in. I still got to do my fingerprint code. FBI will have to have up to 1/3 of Americans in biometric databases by next year. This is an article by InfoWars' Steve Watson. Leading privacy watchdog has warned that FBI plans to have up to 1/3 of all Americans in facial recognition databases by next year. Forget the fact that they told Google they couldn't do it. The government's going to do it. The Electronic Frontier Foundation notes in a communique that some 52 million Americans could be on the next generation identification NGI biometric database by 2015, regardless of whether they are regardless if they've ever committed a crime or been arrested. My group managed to obtain information pertaining to the program via the FOI request. The database will also hold fingerprints, of which the FBI has around 100 million records, as well as retina scans and palm prints. Profiles on the system will contain your personal details such as your name, address, age, and race. The system will be capable of searching through millions of facial records obtained only through mugshots, but also not only through mugshots, but through civil images. Let's go to that video. Oh, it's YouTube, so it'll pull up quickly. Oh, it's gone. Just my luck. You know, it's funny. YouTube's one of the worst censors out there. I tell you what. I'm on YouTube, but I'm on another account. My original account with my first... I have like, I think 150 videos on there, is all censored. I can't do live on there anymore because they blocked me and they didn't want certain stuff. Just like this video was blocked. One of my shows, I think it was last week, they blocked the entire show. A lot of times they'll block it in certain countries and they'll come back and say this video will not be seen in certain countries. And there's a little thing there, you can click on it. It doesn't really give you much information. But on that one show, I think it was last Friday, it says it's been blocked. Nobody will be able to see it, and you can no longer do live broadcasts. So I had to go into another channel, which sort of sucks, and I'm looking for another option besides using YouTube, because they do this to a lot of people, a lot of alternative stations out there. Even though you've got the fair use option out there where you're just using it for news and communication, you're not really doing anything copyright worthy, they still pull that stunt on you. But basically that's what that biometrics was saying. A map with EFF pieces show which states are already complying with the program, and it looks like Michigan has signed in. They're fully complying. It's hard to tell with the colors, especially when you're colorblind, but here's the map of it. It's got your color grids up there. If you can freeze this screenshot, you can review it. All right. This means that even if you have ever been arrested for a crime, if your employer requires you to submit a photo as part of your background check, your face image could be searched. And you could be implicated as a criminal suspect. So lots of concerns there. Privacy advocates are up in arms over it, as should many Americans be concerned about it, just not your privacy advocates. Do you want biometrics everywhere? I had a story. I don't know what happened to it. I was going to show it, and I had a film roll with it too, and it may have been that one that I just lost. But basically, an individual, I think it was in Office Depot, and he went up to the cash register, and he was standing there, and he noticed a machine there next to him, about eye level, and lights and stuff, and he wasn't sure what was going on. And basically, it was a biometric machine getting his facial recognition, his retina, and everything. And Office Depot was using it there locally. I don't remember the city or anything, but it was interesting and concerning to the individual that was discussing the issue on his video. It was some YouTube video. It wasn't really a news station. It was some local guy that just was going out and checking it out. Now we're talking about, we're going to jump over to the World Bank, or the world's central banks are gambling immense amount of money. This is, I look out there at the financial system, and right now the market's looking at an up week. It was up, I think, 18 points today, after a bad week last week. For some reason, I look out at the economy and I see direness, if that's a word. I feel like something's not right. Something's amiss. Even though they sit there and they say, "Oh, unemployment's low," I don't think a lot of people are looking for jobs, or the type of jobs they're getting are lower end jobs. I just think there's something in the air where the financial system doesn't seem like it's solid, like it's stable, and it's worrisome to me. I don't know if it's all the news I read out there, and it's just got me concerned, because a lot of times I'll sit here and I'll just read so much news, and I got to take a break from it. Because you're floating so much in your mind, and it's like, oh my God, I never realized a lot of this stuff. Before I started researching it, I used to just sit there. I would watch the 6 o'clock news, local news, and then 6:30 national news on TV. Never really thought much of it. And then I started checking out different sites and different news information, and I started seeing that that a lot of these major medias, if the local major media, the national major media, are just looking at the cover of the book, and they're hoping you won't dive into it. They're giving you what they want, their idea, their view of it. But once you start diving into it and looking at different stories on the same subject matter, different resources on the same subject matter, you start to get a totally different picture, and it expands your horizon to some point to where it's like scary. You're like, wow, I'm more informed than I want to be, and it's almost like the Matrix. Sometimes you feel like you took the wrong pill, and you could just be go back to not being as informed. You could go back just living life like the rest of the people, but it's weird. It's chilling. This is on the banking system's completely dysfunctional, and it's going to lose legitimacy. I think a lot of people feel that with a lot of these bank bailouts and everything else that's out there. It says, "We are nowhere near a solution of the too big to fail problem," Robert Pringle, chairman of the founder and Central Bank Journal, told RT. However, the problem with the banks is that the system is completely dysfunctional. There are huge mega banks that receive a major public subsidies. So what's he saying there? All these huge major banks, the Bank of America, they're being subsidized by us. The bank bailout, that was them over-leveraging themselves, and us taxpayers had to come in and bail them out because they were worried that if they failed, the whole economy, the whole system would go bust. That itself is simply wrong. Underneath it is the whole system in which we rely on credit, especially in the UK, but also in the US and other countries. We rely on pumping credit to get the real economy moving. And isn't that the truth, folks? We're all a credit-driven society here. God, it's amazing. You can't do anything right now. You can't go out there with the amount of money things cost and how much money you're bringing in and all the variables out there. You almost always have to carry this line of credit out there. You're always owing. I like to pay my bills monthly, but I owe on cars. I'm going to owe on my kids' college funds soon. We're always owing something out there, which, it almost gives the economy a false sense of that's a false security, because it's out there saying, hey, yeah, we're humming along, but we're humming along on credit. People are out there spending money they don't have. What happens when it all comes crushing down? I try not to, but it's hard to avoid it. Oh, my mic's not even plugged in. Hopefully you guys are hearing me. Hopefully it looks like my other mic's picking up. Oh boy, let's get this in real quick. Hold on a second. All right, there we go. Should sound a little bit better now that I have this in. But we're basically gambling an immense amount of money, says $4 trillion on FED balance sheets, but it was never supposed to be like this. It was never supposed to be a foursome into gambling such enormous amounts. So he's basically out there saying that the banks are out there gambling the money. They're hoping that this whole credit-driven society will pull the economy out and they'll be saved. But if it isn't, then we're going to be in a boatload of trouble. Then I get this other email, and this is on, all right, this is a different story that I wanted to talk to, but we'll go into this one too. Emails reveal IRS plot jail conservatives, and this is something else they're uncovering with their investigation into the whole IRS for targeting non-profit organizations like anybody that said Tea Party or showed some kind of conservative approach to politics. They said, oh, we targeted liberals too, or those to the left, but they could not come up with one that they did. New emails show that the day before Lois Lerner, let me start over. A series of emails from ex-IRS official Lois Lerner, she's the head of this whole thing that's been going on, reveals she was in contact with Eric Holder, he's our Attorney General, Department of Justice, about prosecuting those organizations, according to the Washington Watchdog. Which organizations? Conservative organizations. It says these new emails show that the day before she broke the news of the IRS scandal, Lois Lerner was talking to a top Obama Justice Department official about whether the DOJ would prosecute the very same organizations that the IRS had already improperly targeted. IRS emails show the Department of Justice is now implicated and complicated in the IRS scandal. And perhaps that's why the Justice Department and Eric Holder has been saying, well, there's nothing to pursue here. We're not going to pursue it. Remember last week he told the congressman, listen here, buddy, you don't want to go there, to the congressman. IRS had admitted creating special hurdles for conservatives opposing President Obama's policies, and when they tried to get tax-exempt status. And it goes on and on. This is an article that was put out by WND, which is pretty good. They're a pretty solid organization when it comes to getting news out there. This goes on top of the fact that I just saw something where the Obama administration was making it more difficult for conservatives to get incorporated, or I forget what I shouldn't go into it, but it was again the targeting of the conservatives out there and how he goes to these special links and how he continues to skirt the law and nobody's doing anything about it. Time and time again you hear about him taking action, illegal action, inappropriate action, but nobody's doing anything about it. He continues to get away with it. It's almost like my whole police philosophy. Officers aren't disciplined, they continue to do it. Obama's not disciplined, he continues to do it. And when is it going to stop? When is it all going to stop? Now we're on to the Bundy Ranch. It's been all over the news. Basically since the feds cleared out of there hasn't been much news there. They went in and they found out that the feds destroyed a bunch of equipment out there. The story that I'm going to share now shows slaughtered cattle that were found on the Bundy Ranch, and they put it up on their Facebook page. It's a prize bull that appeared to have been killed by gunshot wounds alongside the message evidence of cattle that were shot. Despite a court order restricting BLM to only seizing Bundy's cattle, video shows the federal agents cut holes in water tanks and destroyed fences belonging to the Bundys during the operation. So let's go ahead and go to that video real quick. Oh, that's the poor dad cow you're seeing there, or cattle. Bullet next to him. This is where they were they were hoarding them. Another image taken from the aircraft shows Bundy's cattle is corralled into small pens. Shortly after the image was taken, the FAA moved to shut down the airspace over the Bundy Ranch, prompting speculation that the feds were attempting to hide evidence that was they were mistreating the cattle. Let's go ahead and listen to this. I think this is from Fox News. We get the lovely commercial.
Customized website today.
All right, so Now, a lot of people are concerned out of Bundy because you had... Oh, we can skip it. Okay, here we go. Oops.
Covering it's the battle between that cattle rancher out in Nevada and the federal government, and that battle that resulted in an armed standoff. Where are we today? William Lachiness joins us with the very latest on this. William?
Well, Jenna, the Bureau of Land Management said on Friday night that the illegal structures on Bundy's ranch, the water tanks and corrals, had to be removed to restore the land to its natural state and prevent the rancher from restarting his illegal cattle business. However, the court order justifying this BLM operation only appears to have given the agency the authority to seize and impound Bundy's cattle, not, as these pictures show, cut holes in water tanks and destroy water lines and fences, damage that Bundy blames on BLM cowboys, who also allegedly killed 2 prize bulls.
If you notice, I'm inside this pen where that bull was shot. And if you look along the inside of this pen, there's nothing where this pen has been bent. If you look on the ground, the post is still in the same spot. It hasn't even moved. It's not like the bull was smashing this pen and trying to attack the people or anything. The pen is sitting here, hasn't moved, no damage whatsoever. Where was the danger in that bull?
Well, the BLM wranglers also allegedly shot another bull because they were considered dangerous and they might gore the horses. Bundy's friends were told by those wranglers, and this white bull was shot 5 times. Now, somewhere...
The court order that I saw, does it say that they can destroy infrastructure, destroy corrals, tanks, desert environment, shoot cattle?
Now, the BLM is not accepting phone calls from the media. Reporters are only permitted to submit questions by email, which we did about 19 hours ago regarding these allegations, and have got nothing back. Jenna?
And William, what was supposed to happen to the cattle?
Well, the BLM said if Bundy wasn't willing to pay damages, and remember, he doesn't even recognize federal authority to assess those damages, that they would sell his cattle. Well, only we discovered one big problem. No one in Nevada would touch Bundy's cattle for fear of being blacklisted.
The sale yards are very nervous about taking these, what has in the past been basically stolen cattle from the federal government.
So documents show the BLM paid a Utah wrangler $966,000 to collect Bundy's cattle and a Utah auctioneer to sell them. What they did not plan for is this: a letter from Utah's Governor Gary Herbert refusing to let Bundy's cattle cross state lines. And I'm saying, quoting, "As Governor of Utah, I urgently request that a herd of cattle seized by the Bureau of Land Management from Clive and Bundy not be sent to Utah. There are serious concerns about human safety and animal health and well-being if these animals are shipped and sold in Utah." So the governor sent that letter 3 days before the BLM roundup, which is why the agency was still sitting on those cattle on Saturday morning, and it had no way to get rid of them. The standoff, Jenna, is far from over, since Bundy still doesn't recognize federal authority over federal land, and he continues to use it in violation of that court order, which says his argument, and I quote, is without merit.
Yeah, and see, I don't know if I agree with Fox News there. From what I've been hearing, the whole issue is that the state, even the governor of Nevada declares that that is state territory. The federal government came in and somehow declared it their territory. It was just 87% of the territory in Nevada they had under their control. It's jumped up to 90%, and they're going out there and basically just taking the territory that they want later. So that's where the issue lies. Is Bundy is said, look, I don't mind. If I owe money to the state, I'll pay the state. The state, I don't think states he does. Who's stating he does is the federal government, because they're saying it's theirs. And right now you got 2 entities, the state and the federal government, declaring the property theirs. And who do you listen to? And a lot of people will state that it's the state's property and not the federal government's. Now, the federal government was uncovered through the Alex Jones show that there's 2 years ago. You had Harry Reid's son, Rory, who's with a prominent law firm, basically sponsoring a Chinese government firm that wanted to come in and spend $5 billion on solar lighting or doing some solar power energy out there. And they even mentioned in their documents that Bundy's going to be an issue out there. His name's mentioned in the documents. Now, that supposedly went away a year ago, but many people say no, just because it didn't pursue in the courts, it didn't go away. It was still out there, still active, and still an issue. As soon as Harry Reid's name was mixed into it, next thing you know, the BLM was pulling out of there. Also, it should be note that on the BLM, their chief director is the former, I think, senior spokesperson for Harry Reid. So a lot of a tangled weave that we have webbed. Okay, or tangled web that we have weaved. I'll get it right one of these days. All right, so next is going to be, this story. This is a story that I had 2 days ago, and let's go ahead and play it. I don't recall too much of it. I recall it, and I'm sure once I start watching the video, I'll remember more of it. But it was on Chris Matthews, and I don't have a story that goes along with it, but it was just how, if you guys remember, I was talking how MSNBC and the one individual, one of their anchors on there, was stating basically that Medicaid is not being expanded in many states because of racism. Now you have Chris Matthews, who's an anchor on the same station, MSNBC, and he's coming in there just saying that America's just swimming in racism. And for some reason, you keep seeing this these liberal stations that keep pulling out the race card. Let's see if we can even get it to play. Here we go.
We had Jim Crow for 100. We have racial segregation in housing, which is unbelievable. There's an untold amount of it still in business, which you can't isolate. And then we sit around like purists and say, oh, I've detected some racism here. It's all around us. And we don't even we're swimming in it to some extent. And yet we don't know how to define it or limit it or push away from it. We all agree you got to push away from it. Now, what you said was, to me, unexceptional. Because about the leadership. John Boehner has refused to challenge the nutballs in this party who believe in birtherism. And that's not even just racism. That's racism plus stupidity.
Now, how is birtherism racism? That's God. Sorry, I had to turn it off. He's such an idiot. All right. Quick clip, and now we're moving on to Heartbleed. I've heard a lot about Heartbleed and how it impacted the Open SSL and how it was an issue from a couple years. I saw something yesterday, I think, where Google knew about it prior to the government and decided not to tell the government. But I hadn't really heard of any attacks. I've heard of possibility for attacks, and but nothing really about an attack. So this next story is going to be about how Heartbleeding hacking spree. Let me see who's from, so if it'll pull up quick or not. Oh, it's from Bing. All right, so let's go ahead and start to pull it up real quick. Sometimes Bing can take a little bit. Oops, that's Chris Matthews. We're done with that idiot. Hold on 1 second. Here we go, Heartbleed. All right. And basically, this is on my 19-year-old computer science student that was arrested in relation to a data breach of 900 social insurance numbers from Canada's revenue agency.
Farmers, we believe what you don't know.
I can't silence this commercial,
What if you didn't know to get
so
we
have to enjoy it. Unless I can do that, I don't know if you guys can still hear me though. Let's see if I go to the split screen and see. Yep, I think you guys can still hear me. Oh, there's my solution. Going forward. Okay.
Canada's revenue agency fell victim to the Heartbleed bug on Friday, and Canadian officials have now made an arrest in relation to a data breach. According to CBC, a 19-year-old computer science student has been charged. It's believed he stole 900 social insurance numbers from the CRA website. CTV News reports the arrest happened after officials searched the suspect's home.
On Tuesday, officers asked Stephen Soulis Reyes to come to the London police station. He did so voluntarily.
After learning of the Heartbleed bug, the CRA said it preemptively closed out access to its online services. Unfortunately, the move didn't happen quickly enough. Soulis Reyes allegedly exploited the bug to gain access to the data over a 6-hour period, and the arrest came only 4 days after a security breach was first detected. The CRA says those affected by the breach will receive a registered letter letting them know their information was compromised. The agency will also offer free credit protection services. The tax deadline, originally April 30th, has been pushed to May 5th. Sulis Reyes, who is set to appear in court July 17th, has been charged with unauthorized use of a computer and mischief in relation to data. For Newsy, I'm Mike.
All right, so there you have it. That's basically the first time I've heard of a actual incident with this whole Heartbleed hacking or Heartbleed virus. So hopefully there won't be any more. I suspect there will be. Hopefully we'll keep it limited and there will not be a ton of them. Over to the global issues out there, public Italy, which is near and dear to my heart, as many of you guys know. They're having a public debate, debt that's at record high right now. I think 2 days ago I brought up the IMF's concerns. Well, now after that came out a report that Italy's enormous public debt continues to grow at an unrelenting pace. The Bank of Italy announced on Monday that the country debt hit a 2.1072 trillion euros in February, over 17 billion euros up compared in January. Only Greece has a higher debt level. Renzi has recently unveiled a major package of tax cuts and investments to revive the struggling Italian economy. It says that Italy is a reliable country. There's no question. They should not be afraid of us. According to their new prime minister, he's a young guy, Renzi, very young guy. But now you're seeing a lot of protest out in the streets. It's been going on daily, it seems like, over there. This is out from Press TV. This covers their high debt. Let's see if they cover the rise.
Italy's enormous public debt continues to grow at an unrelenting pace. The Bank of Italy announced on Monday that the country's debt hit a record 2,107 trillion euros in February, over 17 billion euros up compared to January. Within the 18-nation Eurozone, only Greece had accumulated a higher overall debt mountain.
Il debito pubblico in Italia continua a salire perché ci sono
Public debt continues to grow in Italy because government spending increases rapidly. Italy should go ahead with the plan to privatize public assets and move towards a more effective public spending review. This would definitely help reduce our debt. However, Friday's Council of Ministers will tell us if the government's plan to boost our weak economy goes ahead.
Italy's 2014 budget has been criticized by the European Commission for not doing enough to bring down debt, which stands at over 130% of GDP. This year's budget was approved by ex-Premier Enrico Letta. Meanwhile, the new head of government, Matteo Renzi, has recently unveiled a major package of tax cuts and investments to revive the struggling Italian economy.
The next budget will be a budget that will look carefully at the government expenditure. We are conducting a spending review process, so we will decrease costs, expenditure, and increase revenue. Italy is a reliable country, there is no question, so they shouldn't be afraid of us.
Last week, Prime Minister Renzi's administration has approved an economic blueprint, also known as DEF, Economic and Financial Document, that aims to balance Italy's budget in structural terms by 2016 and be in line with the EU rules. However, Renzi has failed to provide detail on promised spending cuts. Pundits have also criticized them for using one-off revenues to help finance plans for permanent tax cuts.
You know, it's a mess everywhere over there, and it's just like in Greece and Spain and everywhere else. All these people had so many entitlements, and I know they did from Italy, and they got to basically take them away. But what Renzi's doing is, and what he promised when he went into office, according to my sister when I was talking to her the other day, and she still lives in Italy, is giving out 600 euro to everyone out of the job or more, and tax cuts. But how are you going to do that when you have such major debt as they were just covering? Well, all that and the call for more austerity has led to more riots in the streets. I thought I had a picture up there of it. I think maybe I played it 2 days ago where they're riding in Rome. And that's a scene, a video, a picture that many Italians don't want you to see because they want people to continue coming there. They're entering their prime season right now, and they don't want people to be scared away, especially with riders all over the streets. And it was pretty aggressive from what I recall the other day and from the pictures I saw today. Now you have issues over in Egypt. Egypt students are clashing with police over General Sisi's announcement that he plans to run for president. It was another day of violence hitting Egypt. Pro-Morsi students, that's Morsi, the leader of the Brotherhood, who was taken out of office by the army. They held a large protest in Cairo University where they chanted anti-police and military slogans and called for the release of all political detainees. Right now, I think they came out and said that 530 were guilty, and I think they're going to be, I can't remember what they're going to do with them. The protest quickly turned into clash with police forces who turned into tear gas and dispersed it on the protesters. In addition to rubber pellets were used against the students, causing the death of one student and a number of injuries. I think I have a video clip on that incident right here.
Pro-Morsi students held a large protest in Cairo University where they chanted anti-police and military slogans and called for the release of all political detainees. The protests quickly turned into clashes with police forces who in turn used tear gas to disperse the protesters.
Police are bullies and they think they will never change unless the whole ministry is purged from all those who are against the January revolution.
Rubber pellets were also used against the students, causing the death of one student and a number of injuries. 2 local reporters covering the protests were also injured. Student protests have been taking place regularly since the start of the academic year, often turning into deadly clashes between security forces and protesters. Last February, the military-appointed government gave permission to heads of universities to call in security forces to disperse student demonstrations.
We will continue to call for our rights and freedoms till the downfall of the illegitimate regime.
On another front, the presidential elections race is underway in Egypt. Presidential candidate Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's campaign delivered 200,000 endorsements to the Presidential Elections Committee backing Sisi's bid for nomination and thus completing the requirements needed to officially run in the race. The elections have been set for the 26th and the 27th of May.
Student protests, clashes, and casualties are continuing in Egypt as the country moves towards choosing the country's new leader. But will anyone be able to stabilize the country and put an end to the turmoil of the last 3 years is what remains to be seen.
My only question is the guy with the glasses, does he ever take them off? He's running for the presidency. That looked weird. Just before coming on the news over in Ukraine, Russia, a deal was brokered between Russia, the EU, US, and Ukraine, which they hope will, if adopted, the joint document will de-escalate the Ukrainian crisis, according to Lavrov, who's the foreign minister with Russia. The document calls for a immediate start of nationwide national dialogue within the framework of the constitutional process, which must be inclusive and accountable. The most important agreement reached during the talks, according to Lavrov, states that the Ukrainian crisis must be resolved by Ukrainians themselves concerning an end to the conflict, including those related to detaining protesters, occupied buildings, and in the long run, to start a true constitutional reform. Disarmament of the illegal armed groups and the return of all occupied administration buildings. But they want amnesty to all protesters that did not commit grave crimes. So that just came out like just before I came on the news. And before that, I was obviously gathering some of the news that I was going to cover, and you had Putin on there earlier today telling the Ukraine radical escalation puts an edge to the civil war. And maybe that's why they brought this new dialogue, because he was out there saying escalation of the Ukraine crisis virtually puts the country on the brink of civil war, which concerns him. And this was when he was talking to Merkel. And, you know, it concerns him in that a civil war because they got all those gas lines that are running through there. He's got all the Russian ethnic groups that are there. So he has some grave concerns about a potential civil war there. You had U.S. to Putin. This could get ugly, where Obama was in there talking tough. For some reason, I can't see him talking tough. Now, if I see this guy talking tough, Putin, then I believe it. So Obama, for some reason, I just can't see him tough. Recent secret visits to Ukraine carried a warning from U.S. President Barack Obama to Vladimir Putin about his possible future confrontation between the two Cold War rivals. He basically came out on another report, not really this one that I had. He basically came out saying, look, Russia's afraid of us. We'll smash them. We're a superpower. Sure, they have nuclear bombs like us, but military-wise, we'll crush them. And Russia knows this. So Obama's talking tough. Now, the Ukraine usurpers crushing their own people, and this has Russia concerned. Putin was like they're out there saying, look, they're out there with tanks. It says tanks, jets against your own people. Are you nuts? One of the videos showed a low-flying plane. Let's see if I have it here. Those are new sanctions. Ukraine users killing their own people. Here we are. Using tanks on people. Let's do a split screen because I think we got to do a couple of these here. And so he's concerned that they're out there using these tanks against their own people, these low-flying jets. And I don't know if I have the low-flying jet one here.
There are hundreds of ways people use Lysol disinfectant spray. Max's mom uses it on the couch. It freshens,
there we go. Here's the
but unlike
silencer.
Febreze, it's also approved to kill 99.
And one of the biggest concerns here is that, just as I get into it, okay, here we go. See that jet flying low? Look at that. Show of force by the Ukrainians. And we got another one here. Hold on. There it is in slow motion. That show of force by the Ukrainians. Then you have this one. This is from Press TV regarding using their own.
The United Nations Security Council has held a meeting to discuss the human rights situation in Ukraine. The US and Britain came to the defense of the newly installed pro-West government in Kiev, while Russia spoke of atrocities against the people in the eastern parts of the country. Caleb Morpin reports from New York.
Vitaly Churkin, permanent representative of the Russian Federation in the United Nations, took the floor to describe violent repression in eastern Ukraine at the UN Security Council meeting. He highlighted the use of extra-legal armed groups like the Right Sector, which are being mobilized to attack pro-Russia protesters.
Those were as a result of the forcible coup. Usurped power in Kiev have chosen to ignore the legitimate demands of the inhabitants of the southeast and the unconstitutional use of armed force to pacify their own people, blasphemously referring to it as bandits and terrorists. Such callous steps are fraught with the risk of a real civil war in Ukraine.
U.S. envoy Samantha Power defended the actions of the Ukrainian government and claimed that the protests are being incited by Russia.
Over the last several days, heavily armed pro-Russian separatists...
All right, now a couple of things. She's over there saying, hey, these protests are being incited by Russia. Folks, I'm here to tell you, and if you watch my show, you know this, the leaked phone call from Newland, where the United States was financing the protests that the protesters that rose up against the previous Ukrainian government. And they were discussing on the same phone call installing puppets for the United States government. So now you have the hypocrisy of the United States in there crying, hey, Russia's in there helping the protesters and creating, basically bringing about this whole uprising, which to me is ironic.
The city administration, police stations, and other government buildings in 11 cities in Donetsk Oblast. Every major city in the region has at least one building under occupation. It is clear that these actions were not a set of spontaneous events or homegrown.
The Russian Federation is calling for the violent repression of protesters in eastern Ukraine to end, and for the human rights of all people to be protected. David McReynolds, a peace activist from the War Resisters League, says that underlying the crisis is aggression by the U.S. and NATO against Russia.
NATO keeps pushing east toward what had been the Soviet Union. Russia had hoped that when it saw the collapse of Eastern Europe, that the West would let that become more or less neutral. And the West kept pushing NATO farther east.
Reports have surfaced that some Ukrainian soldiers sent to the east have laid down their weapons and joined with the protesters. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon continues to call for dialogue and restraint as tension rises. Caleb Maupin.
And you know what's crazy about all this is the Ukraine government. They're in there. And remember, keep in mind, the current Ukrainian government were the protesters a month ago. They were out there protesting. It wasn't peaceful. I mean, they had some extremists there. There were some tensions, some aggression, some issues. And they were complaining because the Ukrainian government at the time was using force against them, be it rubber bullets, tear gas, and somebody had snipers up on the building. So then they get rid of that government and they come into government. A month later, they now have protesters against them. But what do? They pull out tanks and jets and think it's legitimate. They're trying to legitimize it. I didn't see any tanks or airplanes pulled up on them from the previous government. And now they've gone so far as to call these protesters terrorists so that they can get the UN in there to support their squashing of the protest, the movement, the uprising. So a bit hypocritical, you know, and how can they sit there and say, for us a month ago, using rubber bullets and tear gas and the snipers was aggressive and totally uncalled for, yet it's okay a month later for us to use fighter jets, tanks, machine guns, heavy gear, heavy equipment on the protesters that are out there now. So, what say you? It's just food for thought there, folks. Next is one more thing on the Ukraine. It's a former U.S. deployment. They're talking about U.S. deployment, and this is something else that the United States keeps doing. We keep aggravating the situation with their hawkish approach. We're using this whole situation as a reason to bring more NATO forces closer to the borders of Russia, to put more equipment in there, to put our ships in the Black Sea. Now we have this guy, a former U.S. diplomat and member of the Council of Foreign Relations, James Jeffrey, is calling for U.S. ground troops in the ground to troops to be injected into the brewing civil war in the Ukraine. The best way to send Putin a tough message and possibly deflect a Russian campaign against more vulnerable NATO states is to back it up with a commitment of ground troops. And that's James Jeffrey. A few Congress have suggested sending troops to the Ukraine. Arizona Senator John McCain and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, however, have suggested supporting the coup through government spending on weapons. So the Russians are also upset that there's going to be considered new sanctions against them. Hold on one second. Popping all over the place. Here we go. New sanctions against Russia. Russia has censured the European Union for imposing additional sanctions against Moscow over the turmoil. The United States is considering more
HP is a very diverse company. We're not just strictly printers or personal computers.
Sanctions against Russia instead of scaring us with another set of sanctions. The European Union should focus on the joint search for a solution to the Ukrainian crisis, says Russia.
I see tougher sanctions from the U.S. this weekend.
I think the sense we're getting from here in D.C. is absolutely more is on the way, particularly as if this meeting today in Geneva plays out the way everyone expects without some sort of clear breakthrough in the crisis in Ukraine. And the message we've gotten from the White House, from the State Department, from the Treasury Department is that things are teed up right now to once again go after cronies, if you will, people close to Vladimir Putin, people seen as a part of industry there, and that the idea of sectoral sanctions on entire industries in Russia, those are still being held out there as a final stick, if you will. We may not have crossed that bridge just yet, but those are out there as well, and those the White House believes would have an impact on the Russian economy. Whether or not they have an impact on Vladimir Putin, get him to change his mind, that's another matter.
Is there concern that any of these sanctions could have an impact on the U.S. economy or the European economy?
Well, there are a lot more concerns in Europe, for sure, that there's some sort of reprisal in store for them if they go along with these sanctions. There was a meeting, of course, the EU just in the last couple of days where individual sanctions were listed. Countries were allowed to look at this list of possible options on the table, what the likely impacts would be on Russia and what the likely reprisals would be. And even though there's a sense that, yes, more needs to be done, a bigger stick needs to be held out there, individual countries are really reticent about some of these sanctions because they might hurt them more than other countries within the EU, and they're trying to deal with that friction right now. Not every country is treated the same way. Not every country, of course, has the same economic relationship with Russia.
And some would say, Peter, that the diplomacy starts at home. Richard Haas with us with the Council on Foreign Relations. Your book of last year really emphasized get your house in order before you project internationally. Here we are. Do we have the house in better order?
All right, we don't need to listen to the rest of that. But again, they're pursuing the sanctions. We're going to hop over to Saudi Arabia, which seems to begin themselves in a bit of trouble ever since Israel came out and basically been saying that they've been working with the Saudis in Kuwait. Hold on a second. Saudis in Kuwait as for a solution to the Syria issue, or Iranian issue too. A lot of people have concerns with that, and the Arabians consider that the kiss of death. Behind the scenes, they have been, a lot of these Arabian countries behind the scenes work hand in hand with Israel, but in public's eye, it's a different story. Whoops.
In more than 3-year-old war on Syria amidst the killing and bloodshed, there's a sense of optimism. Besides the army advances, and they have been major ones, officials have declared that a presidential vote will be held, the predicted winner, by some accounts, to be Bashar al-Assad. If so, an embarrassing defeat for its international foes and Syrian opposition and their backers like Saudi Arabia, not to mention the U.S. On this edition of the debate, we'll discuss Syria at length, like the first notable U.S.-made anti-tank weaponry spotted in the hands of these insurgents. And in addition, why is there silence on the part of the UN Arab League envoy, Lakhdar Brahimi?
You know, that's something else as he's talking. Pictures were released today of Syrian militants using
These people have gathered in the Syrian capital Damascus to reaffirm support for President Bashar al-Assad and the army. The rally comes as the Syrian army has in recent months achieved major gains in its fight against foreign-backed insurgents. On Monday, government troops said they're in full control of the ancient Christian town of Malula. This followed the army's recapturing of several towns in the strategic Kalamun region on the outskirts of Damascus. Troops have also managed to retake key towns along the Lebanese border, which the militants had used for sending forces and weapons into Syria. President Assad has said, "This is a turning point in the crisis, both militarily in terms of the army's achievements in the war against terror, and socially in terms of national reconciliation processes and growing awareness of the truth behind the attacks targeting the country." The army gains come as the militants continue to receive arms and funds from their Western and regional Arab supporters, namely Qatar and Saudi Arabia. A newly released video shows they've now received US-made anti-tank missiles as well as training on how to use them. The US, as well as its Western and Arab allies, are accused of intensifying support for the insurgents to prepare ground for regime change in Syria, an issue which they have been insisting on since the beginning of the ongoing crisis in the Arab country more than 3 years ago. Now, with the latest achievements by the Syrian government, the tide of the war seems to have shifted. Syria is also preparing to hold the presidential election this year, with the media reports saying that the date will be announced next week. The upcoming vote will have multiple candidates, and this is part of reforms carried out by the government.
Alright, so there you have it. They might have multiple candidates. Oh, you guys were on me the whole time. You're on me the whole time. Sorry about that. I'm sure you guys enjoyed looking at my mugshot instead of the Syrian militant. It was an interesting story. You probably heard most of it, but the Syrian militants were out there, and some interesting video shots. They showed the American weaponry that's there and all that good stuff. So, again, I apologize for that. I have to do better with that. Succession. Succession is the talk of the town, usually when we're talking Italy, Spain, Scotland, right? Well, did you know it's also the talk of the town in the United States? In Wisconsin, the GOP to vote on pro-succession resolution at the convention on May 2nd and 4th. The Wisconsin State Republican Party will vote on a resolution claiming that it supports legislation that upholds Wisconsin's right under extreme circumstances to succeed. State sovereignty resolution was approved in March by the Regional Republican Caucus. The proposal recommends the nullification of all federal mandates that exceed the scope of the Constitution delegated powers of federal government. Now, I must say that Republicans say that they have no plans on succeeding from the Union. What it is meant to do is send a point home that, hey, we can if we want, and you guys need to take us more seriously. Over to Obamacare, one of my favorite subjects, and I'll make sure I hit the screen this time. There we go. This is on, we're having more issues where people are just being denied access to medical treatment. This is a young lady that was, she's from New York. She's suffering from a neurological disease that required 4 brain surgeries, but she was dropped by her doctors and denied medication due to Obamacare. Now, before she signed up, it states that, hold on one second. Even though Obamacare plan she purchased assured her that she was covered, her insurance card was denied. Her insurance card was denied. She went to fill her prescriptions, and they said tough luck on that one. Then she went to get her doctor that she was told was covered, and he was not covered. So let's listen to this one briefly, if I can get it going.
Neurological disease that causes nerve damage has been dropped by all of her doctors and denied medications due to her Obamacare plan. After receiving her new health coverage in January through the New York State Health Marketplace, Figueroa went to her pharmacy to fill her prescriptions. While she had signed up for her new health coverage, because her old plan was dropped by Obamacare, her insurance card was denied. She also learned that all her longtime doctors didn't accept the new insurance plan. All of this left Figueroa without medication for a rough 3 months of excruciating pain, withdrawal symptoms, and immobility. Representative Michael Grimm's office intervened on Ms. Figueroa's behalf and has been able to obtain some of her prescriptions. Grimm advises his constituents to test their new health coverage by calling their doctors and pharmacy to make sure they accept the new coverage.
You know, isn't
Grimm
it?
Also warns that we didn't solve
That's
anything.
funny. He says, call and test it and see if they'll accept it. Isn't it a bit late? Because you can't get any other insurance after the deadline of last month, and you can't cancel your current insurance, as I showed. Many people are having issues. How about this? Over 24 widows of Alabama.
More than 24 widows who were married to retired Madison County employees lost their health
Actually,
insurance.
let's do this here. Sorry.
More than 24 widows who were married to retired Madison County employees lost their health insurance coverage earlier this year. And now one commissioner says, well, it's time to give it back to them. That change was sparked by the new federal health care law, but whether or not coverage can actually be restored really isn't clear. WHNT News 19's Nick Banaszak has the story.
What I'm trying to do is get this coverage back to them.
Madison County
County Commissioner Roger Jones says no one realized just how much the new federal health care law would change things, especially for the spouses of some of his former employees.
A lot of these people are on fixed incomes, low fixed incomes. Some of them are living on Social Security and very little else, and health insurance is very important to them.
The widows who were dropped in January had always been covered under the county's old self-insured health care plan, but officials tell us the program had to be abandoned when they were informed that new regulations in Obamacare would amount to an extra $25 million per year.
All right, new regulations, an extra $25 million per year. So what do? They go out and drop all these widows, even though they guaranteed their spouses who had worked their entire life or the amount of time needed to get the insurance that they would be covered. Another travesty in Obamacare. Now, how about the taxes of Obamacare? You're probably wondering, am I really paying more taxes? Oh, you bet you're paying more taxes. There's finally a new array of taxes resulting from the president's health care legislation. Let's see. There he is. There's old Barack. There we go. Fox. This is Fox News, so it's going to be slanted to the right.
Sponsored by Let's Get to Work.
If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health.
I'm going to keep this on
It was the lie of the
because
year.
it's against
300,000 in Florida lost coverage. What does Charlie Crist?
This is the local Florida governor.
Glad he did it. I think it's been great.
Obama even promised.
You will be able to keep your doctor.
This is an awesome, strong ad against
What
Chris.
does Charlie think now?
I won't shy away from it. I think it's been great.
Not great for Florida families.
You know, I'm not a fan of Scott, but I'm definitely not a fan of Chris.
Okay, check the calendar, America. It is that day. It's tax day, and this year Obamacare is a big factor for many Americans. And Doug McElway is on that beat. Today is live in Washington. Who's going to feel the effects of this law the most, Doug?
Well, Bill, you know, the president has often said that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can do well enough to raise a family, own a home, send the kids to college, and put away money for retirement. But it is precisely a lot of those people, especially those at the middle to higher income levels who are living in expensive cities and expensive suburbs who are really sweating bullets today. Americans for Tax Reform says that Obamacare has increased or imposed 20 new taxes totaling $500 billion over the next 10 years. Here's just a few of them. There's a new Medicare tax increase for individuals earning over $200,000 or married couples earning over $250,000. There's a new net investment income tax. 3.8% tax applies to individuals, estates, and trusts that have investment income above $200,000 or $250,000 for joint filers. And there's a new 3.8% surtax on net investment income. Capital gains are taxed at a top rate of 23.8%. Those who designed Obamacare say they had really one principle in mind with these kinds of taxes.
The taxes that were included in the Affordable Care Act were designed to slow health care cost growth, to reduce the federal deficit, and to pay for spending for things like tax credits for middle-class families so that it would make health insurance more affordable, to assist seniors to pay for their prescription drugs, and to increase the life of the Medicare Trust Fund.
But it is unclear at this stage of the game whether any of those goals that they had in mind will actually be met, Bill.
There are also a number of Obamacare taxes on businesses as well. What are they? How are they dealing with that, Doug?
Yeah, there sure are. Insurance companies, just for example, are facing new taxes relative to the premiums they collect. Medical device manufacturers also facing new taxes. Here's Grover Norquist.
You tax insurance companies, when you tax medical devices, when you tax insurance plans.
All right, well, that covered the taxes. Now, did you also know that they're going to want the money for Obamacare? If you owe a penalty for not having insurance, they plan on taking it right out of your taxes.
Obamacare. They expected you not to want to do something about it, so this is what they're going to do. IRS warns Obamacare tax must be paid with your tax return. So this is what they're going to do. This is how they're going to get their money. They took a government-issued product or service, they wrapped it up as a tax, and now you're going to have to pay for it. President Obama's Internal Revenue Service today quietly released a series of Obamacare healthcare tax tips, warning Americans that they must obtain, quote, qualifying health insurance, as defined by the federal government, or face a shared responsibility payment when filing their tax returns in 2015. So the government is going to tell you how you qualify and what the situations and things are that's going to be in your package. For example, myself, a single male with no dependents, must have maternity care for whatever reason, because that's in the healthcare bill. So I don't understand this notion that they're going to tell me what's responsible, what's okay, what's decent, and then I have to pay for it. I have a very big problem with that. That's why I don't want Obamacare. I'm not trying to pay these people any taxes, but they're going to get you coming and going, whether you sign up for Obamacare and you have your rates go up, you maybe drop from your plan in California, Florida, or other places, many other places. If nothing else, you're going to have to pay out the wazoo as far as these taxes are concerned. So this is just another reason. You're talking about he's going to do more. This is doing more. He's going to take it straight out your tax return. And another way he's doing more, immigration reform.
All right, so that's...
Obama eases penalties for
we
business.
could go into immigration reform. I actually have something, I think, down on the bottom to cover about that, but that's a different story and a lot more time, huh, folks? All right, how about this? A lot of you may or not recall, it's something that got very little attention out there, and it was something that Mark Rubio, the senator from Florida, put out there when he found out that within Obamacare there's a clause for bailing out insurance companies. He wanted action taken against this. I remember reading about it, and then it just disappeared from the news. And I was outraged, and I was even more outraged that major media wasn't picking this up. Because it's basically that if the health insurance companies that help write the Obamacare come up short, that they'll be covered and bailed out by the taxpayers. Obama administration has offered a plan for funding the healthcare laws in somewhat controversial risk corridors program, which is meant to shield insurances from major losses if Obamacare enrollees are less healthy than anticipated. Ensured bailout and demanded its repeal. And nobody's acting on this. Nobody's repealing it. You're not hearing it in the major media. There's very little news coverage out there on this. One of the 3 programs included in the new law extend to ease insurers' transition to health insurance exchanges, basically limits how much health plan can lose or make in Obamacare health insurance marketplaces in the first 3 years. The Risk Corridor program is funded by money the government collects from insurers, which has been then redistributed in health plans that had greater share or sicker enrollees. So once again, they got a plan out there. Many of the proponents with this have argued that the feds will have to dip into the taxpayer money for the program if the program doesn't collect enough, and they're very concerned about it. It was brought to my attention a couple of months ago when I saw Marco Rubio's Senator Rubio saying something about it, but then it just fell off the radar. Not sure why, but it did. Next is this Census Bureau thing. A lot of the Republicans are upset over how the census is going to basically be asked, and it's going to hide the impacts of Obamacare, if you will, because questions that will not be asked. The news that changes is one of the surveys might run hamstring one of their political strategies, attacks against Obamacare. Hold on one second. Oh man, I can't silence it. Wait, we got the magic button here. Alright, basically it says that the problem is that health insurance data reported in oh wait, that's not it. Will alter the question asked by Americans. And here it comes.
All right, now we do have an explosive report in the New York Times. It says the Census Bureau, at the urging of the White House, is changing its annual survey of health insurance. The changes are so big that we have lost a reliable measure of Obamacare and its impact on insurance. Remember, please, the Census Bureau used to be independent, but since 2009 it reports to the White House. Art Laffer, still with us. The Wall Street Journal headline this morning is Cooking the Obamacare Stats. That sounds to me like they're cooking, the implication is that they're cooking the books. What do you make of this?
Well, first I was very impressed by the New York Times article. It was very explicit, very clear. The one thing I'm surprised at, Stuart, which really does point to your issue of cooking the books, is why wouldn't they do both surveys so you can get an overlap and you could make comparisons over time? That would seem to me to be very easy and very simple to do and give all the critics a good chance of rebutting. I mean, but they aren't doing that. But my best guess, and I have spent a lot of time in Washington in professional capacities, is that these technical people in the Census Bureau and the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, the Treasury, are really professionals and first-class professionals. And I think this is probably a better survey. It just should be done in conjunction with the old survey so that we can make comparisons on Obamacare pre and post. But unfortunately, they're not going to do that.
You go all the way back to the 1970s. Your experience in Washington is at least a generation and a half. Okay. Now, do you think the Wall Street Journal said that the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, was the worst piece of legislation in a generation? Would you agree with that?
It's pretty bad. It's right up there in the top. I mean, it's really terrible legislation. There was a lot of very bad energy legislation under Jimmy Carter, in case you don't remember. Nixon's wage and price controls weren't the best things, the best ideas ever. The tariffs, quotas, we've got all sorts of wonderful examples of horrible legislation. But Obamacare's right up there in the top.
I want you to go back to where we started, the stock market. You pleased so many of our viewers with your suggestion that we're going to get a conservative win in November this year and in 2016. If we do that, if we get the political results that you think we're going to get, how high is high for the Dow Industrial Average?
If you look at the stock market today compared to interest rates, tax rates, and profits in general, the market could go a lot higher. Just based on the relationship.
We don't even know about the market, but there you have it with in terms of the census and some of the concerns that are out there. We're going to jump from Obamacare straight over to Common Core. As usual, I'm running out of time, so this is the part of the segment where I start jumping around because I don't want to go to 3 hours.
We've been working a lot lately at Freedom Project with Catholic schools, and one of the things that's so shocking to me is how many Catholic schools have signed on to this without having to. Yeah. It's completely voluntary for the private schools, and there's this weird notion among Catholic education administrators that we can somehow have Common Core, but this isn't going to pull us closer to the federal government. Sure. A federal government that, by the way, has been obviously hostile to Christianity in general and Roman Catholicism in particular. Think of the Health and Human Services mandate. One of the things that's most alarming about it, and here's one of those interest groups that is an example. It was a video of a Roman Catholic nun talking about why her Catholic school district was adopting Common Core. And she made the argument that all the public schools are going over to this. Right. And if we don't go over to this, we're going to be left out in the cold. Because what's happening, she admitted this, what's happening is all the textbook publishers have gone completely Common Core. So as a Roman Catholic school, her response was, unless we get on board doing with what the public schools do, we'll have no textbooks. We're not no textbooks. Rather than say, you know what, we're already performing.
So are you catching that? So the Catholic schools are basically performing at a higher rate, which he was just about to say. The problem is they don't have to go to Common Core. However, if they want to evolve and continue on in the educational system, they have to go to Common Core because all the textbooks are Common Core.
Right to the public schools. We're going to have our own schools and have our own textbooks, and watch what would happen as this Common Core curriculum absolutely sinks, right? Like every other government standard sinks. The Catholic schools will be flooded with all sorts of new kids who actually want to learn something. But ironically, the Catholic schools are completely
they have been for decades.
Completely selling out to Common Core. In other words, they're cutting their own throats. By joining the consortiums that are voluntarily using Common Core, they are furthering the process of the elimination of any textbook that's not Common Core.
Right. Well, that's the problem. I mean, the more that you join up with all the people who are doing things that take away your freedoms, the faster, of course, your freedoms are going to be taken away. Well, also, you're just thinking, private schools offer an alternative to public schools. So if a parent is already annoyed with the public schools, what they're doing, they're going to look for something different. So if you're just going to do the same thing as a public school, you might as well be one.
The funny thing is when we talk to moms and dads, Catholic school moms and dads, or private school moms and dads, they get it. Yeah. When we talk to, in the case of the Catholic schools, that when we've been able to get in and see bishops and people who are above the education administration, they seem to get it. Yeah. It's the educational administrators, and this is par for the course, because the same people who run Catholic schools.
I think you get the gist of it with that interview. But basically what's happening, too, is it's not all Catholic schools are doing that, but they come in here and they say 99.4% of the students graduate far more than 78.2% of the high school. or public school systems out there. Parents also pay a lot more for their Catholic education. And a lot of people are saying, look, if the standards are going to be the same as public school, why don't I just send them to a public school and just pay for a CCD class on the side, and it'll save me a ton of money. Where's the incentive to go through a Catholic school system if they're going to switch over to the Common Core process? And it says the reading of the selection, what is it? Okay. Still, there's at least 100 dioceses out of 195 in the United States that embrace some form or all of Common Core. And again, I don't know if it's the Catholics or he was saying the school boards within the Catholicism. I don't know if they don't get it or if it's the fact that they get it, but they're limited. I mean, if all of your textbooks are geared around Common Core, you're sort of limited, aren't you? Is the government purposely going out there and saying, well, Catholic schools, you could stick with your rigor that you have now, your curriculum that you have now, but you won't have the books, the textbooks? So are they stuck? I don't know. What say you? Just more information. Again, educate, inform, inspire, change, and then you make the decision. The next thing we're going over to is, this one was funny. It's where board members at a local public school want a dress code for parents that are dropping their kids off. Apparently, they're a little upset with the sagging pants. This is Yahoo, so it might take me a second to pull up. Where is it? Right here. This is here in Florida. Broward County, the school board, Dr. Rosalind Osgood, brought up the idea during a meeting after noticing parents dropping their kids off at Boyd Anderson High School while wearing saggy pants that expose their underwear.
Nation, it's not always pretty. Add brand new belongings from Nationwide Insurance.
Expose their underwear, and they were hanging down. The highly unlikely dress code for parents could be, it's highly unlikely it could be enforced, but they could push that agenda. Here we go.
Most parents probably wish they could drop their kids off at school looking like this. But in reality, getting the kids ready in the morning can be tough. And by the time parents fight traffic to get there, they look like this. But Dr. Rosalind Osgood, a Broward County, Florida school board member, doesn't care. She wants parents looking good when they drop off their kids.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
She says too many parents are showing up at Boyd Anderson High School with saggy pants and curlers in their hair.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
She even brought up the idea of a parent dress code at a recent school board meeting.
You're kidding, right?
It will likely never happen, though. The doc could never enforce it.
All right. Sorry, that made me laugh. There you have it. Okay, what say you? I don't know about that one. Okay, next is privacy. Privacy is always a major issue to me, snooping, and I've been covering the license plate readers and how the officers are using them, and it brings up some of the constitutional rights. Privacy advocates are up in arms. I'm up in arms, and this is an individual who just went out there. Her name's Catherine Watson with Watchdog.org in Virginia. And she went out and she said, the police know exactly where my car has been and when during the past few months. As part of my series on the use of automatic license plate readers in Virginia, I wanted to find out what kind of information the police might have on me. So she did a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. She says that the police captured 16 photos of my car, mostly at night, and recorded my license plate 8 times on 5 dates. A license plate reader captured my plate twice while my car was parked at a lot of my apartment complex, according to latitude longitude records. Police also captured records of my car as I drove to Bible study on a typical Wednesday night. It says that LPR, that's the police basically, generated data may be kept on a computer for up to 30 days, pending upload to the LPR database. LPR, I guess, is the one that maintains it for the police. Their information can be kept up to 6 months. The police in Alexandria, Virginia have 13 mobile systems which are mounted only on police vehicles. And so this has a lot of people concerned, a lot of privacy advocates concerned. I've brought this issue up numerous times. I didn't even realize there were license plate readers until I started bringing the issue up, but here we go.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is shopping around for a service that tracks license plates nationwide. Their goal is to gain access to a commercial database that's been built by the automated scanning of every vehicle that crosses the camera's lens. Catching individuals who pose a threat to national security is mentioned as a primary focus of the system's eventual use. What the proposal does not mention are what types of safeguards will be put in place to protect the innocent from being subjected to invasive surveillance. A spokesperson for Homeland Security said that the information they acquire would be limited to what's deemed relevant for the solving of existing cases.
And who deems what's
the American
relevant?
Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, has made its position on devices such as license plate readers clear. Last year, the organization issued a statement that expressed their concerns about the potential abuse of such technologies. Among them is that a person's entire life history could be assembled by anyone with access to a wealth of non-selectively culled data. That sort of constant monitoring, they say, could chill the exercise of our cherished rights to free speech and association.
All right, so there you have it. Just more food for thought. It's an ongoing conversation that I have on this show. Just giving you more information because, like I said, I wasn't aware of it until I mentioned it about a month ago, and I started researching it more. My next thing is, and I have to do this, is go down to my local Venice Police Department here and see if we have them, because I really don't know if we have them in our town. So, you know what? I know the chief. I'm going to go ahead and do a FOIA and ask him, do we have license plate readers? If so, how can I find out the information on my vehicle, how many times it's been read, and just see. It'll be interesting to find out. In addition to that, maybe the county, because that's just a city. We have the county, we have FHP that could be doing it. This is an interesting article. I've been hitting on the USPS, United States Postal Service. I hit on them on Monday's or Tuesday's show in regards to the ammo purchases and in regards to scanning all of your email for information and how it's been going on for years. And I didn't realize it, and I was not sure if my listeners did. Well, now they have the United States Postal Service is looking into getting into the data for profit mining game. It says they want to try to generate some kind of revenue like Facebook and Google. And did you know, my daughter didn't know this, I was telling her yesterday, it came out in the news and I forgot to pull the article, that Google scans all your emails, Gmail scans all your emails basically that go out. She didn't know that. The story came out yesterday and I forgot to pull it for today's show. I'll look for it and maybe cover it tomorrow. The Chief Marketing and Sales Officer, Najisa Manabi, recently with the United States Postal Office, recently told the Forward-Looking Postal Vision 2020 conference that the Post Office is actively looking for ways to build new business lines around what not long ago might have been considered science fiction, e-commerce bits reports. While some of those ideas include new delivery services from partnerships like grocery chains, others seek to increase revenues from advertising by mining, storing, and analyzing customer data. He says, we're going to know exactly, he uses one example, he said, where a woman test drives two different types of cars in different dealerships while trying to decide which one to buy. We're going to know exactly that she was shopping at two different dealers because of the mail that they're going to send her, and we can send this information out. Now, is that an invasion of privacy? And again, you know, you guys out there, a lot of people are out there saying, oh, what do I care if there's cameras? Well, it evolves. Evolution. It becomes commonplace and you don't realize it. Evolution. Now they're going into the United States Postal Service, scanning your mail, seeing what you're buying, and then communicating that. This government entity wants to communicate that information out there. So the whole thing that people keep missing is, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's the wrong approach. It's little bit by little bit, like a little bit. They keep taking until it becomes commonplace, and you don't even realize it. Be careful what you're saying on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The IRS is now on there. Maybe on this show listening. They all have become places where people post intimate details about their lives, vacation photos, work, success, buying a new home, car, pool, stuff like that. So now the IRS is going through there and looking for money because they feel with the tax dodgers, they've lost up to $300,000 or $300 billion per year off tax evasion, and they're looking for new ways to get out there and get the information. And it's not just the IRS, folks. It's these, like many of us, we're upside down on our houses. We had to walk away from our house. Next thing you know, those people are out there. They're watching. They're looking at your Facebook pages to see if there's something that they can go in and try to grab that money. The banks are the worst, folks. Don't give me gun on the bankers. All right, SARS. I told you guys Tuesday there was a missing SARS tubes, and I finally found a story out there that covers the tubes. So let's go ahead and listen to this. It was out of a lab in Paris. At the time, I wasn't sure. I thought somewhere in Europe. I just wasn't sure. It discovered that 2,349 of the deadly SARS coronavirus had been missing. And what's strange about this is it was in a highly secure area.
Lasts longer than any truck, and Ram 1500 has the best fuel economy of any truck.
There we go. It was in a highly secure area that only somebody with security clearance could have gotten into. This is the same disease. Oh, here we go. What happened? Hold on 1 second. There we go. And let's hit play. Where's play?
Two hosts, one mission, to bring you the real stories with all the facts, interviews, and analysis you need, night after night, back to back.
More than 2,000 vials containing samples of the SARS virus have gone missing from a French laboratory. According to Euronews, the Pasteur Institute in Paris noticed 29 boxes containing 2,349 samples of the virus went missing during an inventory check. The Institute's president says human error was the most likely explanation, though made sure to add the missing samples pose no risk to the public. France 24 reports the samples which were collected from people infected with the virus in 2003 are only fragments and all tested negative. Plus, the refrigerator holding the samples malfunctioned in 2012 and defrosted, which would have killed off any viruses. And if that's not enough to convince you, it's not a problem, according to the Telegraph. Anyone leaving the laboratory has to pass through a disinfection zone, which would have killed off any virus. So everything is like almost definitely, totally, completely fine. Still, not the best news. The president of the Institute told French newspaper Le Figaro, losing the samples is an unacceptable mistake. It is the first time that the Institute has lost samples in this manner, and it is entirely inadmissible. SARS, or severe acute respiratory syndrome, first appeared in China in 2002. It killed 775 people and infected 8,000 more, but there have been no known transmissions since 2004.
All right, call me crazy, folks, but I'm not buying that whole you walk through a decontamination area and the virus disappears. The virus was probably dead because the fridge defrosted. Call me crazy, but I don't feel like buying the Brooklyn Bridge today. Next, we're hopping over. God, long hair sucks sometimes, folks. Next, we're hopping over to the U.S. seizing tax refunds out of your children's tax returns over parents' debt. The government's now going through old records to see if it overpaid people on Social Security, which we know, and they stopped that. It thinks it did, and it can now seize IRS tax refund checks on children of those people thinks it's overpaid. So that's basically what they were doing, and they put a stop to this program. And I mentioned it the other day. Should the IRS, and I don't think they put a stop to it completely. I think they froze it so they can review the process. Should they be able to go after the children tax returns of parents that had debt with the federal government? Are they overreaching? Did you know about this? How come major media is not covering this? How many parents out there have died probably with debt to the federal government or perceived debt, or government says debt? We don't know because try proving them different. And then they go after their kids. Is it just? I don't think so, folks. And why isn't major media on a story like that is my question. This is a story that was on here, and it's on UN Resolution 2117. Let's see if it's still on here. I actually put this on here a couple days ago. I should have YouTubed it. All right, let's see.
Greetings, citizens of the United States of America. We are anonymous. In latest news, the United Nations Resolution 2117 lists 21 points dealing with firearms control, but perhaps the most interesting point is point number 11. Calls for member states to support weapons collection, disarmament. The U.S. Senate voted against a UN resolution with a 53 to 46 vote. This is that brief, glorious moment in history when everyone stands around, reloading. Now, which 46 senators voted to destroy us? Well, let their names become known. If you vote in one of the states listed with these 46 legacy traitors, vote against them. In a 53 to 46 vote, the Senate narrowly passed a measure that will stop the United States from entering into the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty. The statement of purpose from the bill reads, to uphold Second Amendment rights and prevent the United States from entering into the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty. The UN Small Arms Treaty, which has been championed by the Obama administration, would have effectively placed a global ban on the import and export of small firearms. The ban would have affected all private gun owners in the U.S. and had language that would have implemented an international gun registry. Now get this, on all private guns and ammo. Astonishingly, 46 out of our 100 United States senators were willing to give away our constitutional rights to a foreign power. In this video description are the 46 senators who voted to give up your rights to the United Nations. These senators voted to let the United Nations take our guns. They need to lose their next election. We have been betrayed. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. To the 46 senators who betrayed the citizens of the United States, be very well prepared for your resignation. Expect that.
All right, there you have it, Anonymous. And yes, folks, if you have never watched their videos, they always come up with that computer voice overture, whatever they call it. It might be, a lot of people might see it and think, extreme conspiracy, extremist on the right, left, whatever side. But, it is true. That is a true agenda out there. It is United Nations. And it does basically take away our constitutional rights. And Obama, I believe, is pushing for it and in favor of it. So that's our show for today. Hopefully I was able to educate you with some different thoughts that may help you better formulate a decision, inspired you to get out there and do something locally, be it in your government, in life, or just go out there and make a change for the better, folks, because that's what it's all about. If you'd like to sponsor the program, just go to thefrancescoabbruzzino.com. There's information on rates and all that good stuff. Past shows, my cooking show, which seemed to be a big hit, me singing up on the stage last weekend. I just was on there, and I think it had over 5,000 hits, which I don't know why people would want to hear me sing. Maybe to look foolish. I don't know. That's it. So, everybody if you're not on the air tomorrow because you're off work, it's Good Friday. Have a great Good Friday. Have a great Good Easter. I will be on the air, and I will see you guys tomorrow.